Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mastery of Montessori Leadership. Today, we're going to discuss strategic planning and mapping out your Montessori school's destination for success. Imagine you're planning a vacation for your family. You're planning your dream vacation. You would first do some research into figuring out where you might want to go. You'd have to make some considerations based on limitations such as cost of the vacation, time, distance, age of the travelers, climate, local attractions. You would work through those considerations, you would plan your trip, and you would go. And this process is called strategic planning. It's a very simple example, but strategic planning is something which all well run Montessori schools must do in order to thrive. So, why plan? Well, in order for anything to happen, there has to be a plan in place because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish anything without a plan. So, strategic planning defines a Montessori school's direction for achieving goals. Um, in professional sports, collegiate sports, the coaches spend most of their time planning, and their goal is to win games. So, part of their planning requires them to understand the strengths of their players and understand, based on those strengths, who should be in certain positions. They come up with plays and they determine when they will be run and who will be involved in the plays. Um, and and they plan. They watch film, and they look at what happened in every game, the wins and the losses, and they also have to understand the climate of their competitors. What are the strengths of the teams they're playing against, and how do they overcome some obstacles that these other teams will present, obstacles to their winning? So, coaches who do not plan will not be successful. Um, Hosting a holiday meal, let's say you are hosting Thanksgiving, it requires a lot of planning. You have to decide who you're going to invite. Is it going to be family and friends, just family, just friends? Will you ask them to bring anything? What will you serve? What's going to be on your menu? What time will you eat? What sort of food prep has to be done, and how long will it take? When you have limited oven space and a lot of side dishes, you have to figure out what needs to go in at what time so that everything comes out warm and ready to eat when the turkey's done. You have to decide if you're going to do a buffet or sit down meal, and that will determine how many tables you need, how many chairs you need, how many wine glasses you need. And your meal would be a complete disaster if you don't think all of these things through. Getting into shape requires planning. Um, Whether your goal is to lose weight or increase your endurance or your muscle tone, you have to understand where you are now. How much do I weigh? What's my endurance? What's my muscle tone? And what are your goals? And what types of exercises will you do in order to meet your goals? What will the exercise schedule be? And how are you going to restructure your busy schedule to fit your workouts in? Will it affect your diet? And in order to achieve the results you want, whatever they might be, you have to plan how you're going to get there, and you have to stick to the plan. People don't just throw on a pair of sneakers and run marathons. They plan and they train for a very long time before they actually get out there and run that distance. If they didn't, they would probably hurt themselves or die in the process. So, strategic plans are necessary in all of these examples, but particularly necessary for Montessori schools in order to achieve their goals. So, in planning your dream vacation, deciding where you want to go requires the considerations of cost, distance, time off. How much vacation time do you have? What's the climate in where you're going? What are some of the local attractions? Um, what are the accommodations like there? And who's going on your trip? So, will this appeal to all of them? Whether you have little people or older people, is this going to be a place that we can all enjoy? And then you have to plan on how you're going to get there. You're going to drive, fly, walk, take the bus or the train. And then you have to execute the plan. And part of the planning might require that you save money, that you book time off from work, that you arrange transportation once you decide how you want to get there. Um, and you have to take care of things that are not really part of the trip. Like if you have animals and you're leaving for this trip and you need someone to come in and take care of your animals. You need someone to pick up your mail. You might need someone to look after your house. Um, you're going to book your hotel and set your itinerary. And after you come back from the trip, you're likely to evaluate it. Did it meet your expectations? Did it fall short of your expectations? Is it a place that you want to return to for future vacations, or do you want to go somewhere else? And you kind of think of what would have made this a better trip for me. What would I have done differently or planned differently in order to enjoy my vacation? So, what is strategic planning? Strategic planning involves setting goals, determining what needs to be done to achieve the goals, and then organizing your resources to execute the actions and achieve the goal. So, setting goals, figuring out how you're going to meet them, and then organizing your resources to execute them. And why is this important for Montessori leaders? We're not hosting Thanksgiving dinner, we're not coaching a team, um, and you might not be planning a trip. But as Montessori leaders, you're the visionary setting the path for the future of what your school will become. I always envision the leader as the captain of the ship, someone that's sitting at the helm, um, and looking out, envisioning the destination, and getting planning on how he's going to get everybody there safe and avoid any obstacles that might present themselves. So as leaders, you have to go through this delicate process of imagining the ideal, imagining that ideal vacation, that ideal place that you want your school to be, and then clearly articulating the strategy to put your plans into action. And the articulation is as important as the actual plan. So, 5 steps for setting your plan in motion. The first step would be to define your mission. And your mission is simply the reason you exist. Why are you here? What is your purpose? The second step would be to define your core values. And core values are, what do you believe? What do you believe in? What do you think is important as a school? And from those, the core values set the platform for your vision. So we believe in this and our vision for the school, that in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, this is what we're going to be based on where we are now and what we believe. The strategic plan is that roadmap. The strategic plan is that compass that gets you from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. And the last step in executing your plan is to monitor it, is to understand how things are going. Are you achieving what you hope to achieve? And if not, you need to revise the plan. When developing your mission statement, keep it real. By that, I mean use language, words that most most people understand, the general population understands. Your mission statement is identifying who you are to the community. And if people don't understand who you are because you're using words that they can't relate to, they're not going to be able to connect with your community. You have to keep it short so that faculty can easily recall and relay it. So, from the head of school to the chef, that prepares the meals for the children. Everyone on the faculty should know the mission statement and be able to recall it. And if that requires that you post it throughout the school, then that's fine to do. Everybody should know what the mission statement is, be able to recall it and relay it, because if they don't know what it is, they can't buy into it, because this is your present state. It has to be realistic. It's about what you're doing right now. So don't come up with these flowery words that really don't align with your current situation. The mission statement is written in the present tense because we're talking about the here and now. The future tense is reserved for your vision, where you want to take your school. And it's evolving. The mission statement is not set in stone because as things change and you accomplish goals, so things that were previously off in the distance, you've now accomplished, they're going to change your mission statement. They change who you are because you've accomplished those things. They're no longer in your future, they're in your present. Your mission statement answers the question, where are you now? And I think for leaders, this is probably the hardest step to complete because it requires a leader to be open, honest, and vulnerable. And it's hard for us to look ourselves in the mirror and say, this is what's wrong with me. This is where the weaknesses of my school and the organization that I run. And it requires that we open ourselves up to input from the community because it's really about how we are perceived. So you might think you're one thing. If the community perceives you as something else, their perception is reality. So opening yourself up in the form of surveys, parent advisory boards, discussion groups, and engaging members of the community, engaging them in open and honest communication about how they feel about the school. And a good exercise in defining your mission statement is answering some key questions that will help you define your mission. So, the first question would be, what are your core competencies? What are you good at? Where do the strengths of your school lie? Um, and that could be in any number of areas. And what are your inherent weaknesses? What does your school struggle with? For many schools, they struggle with enrollment. The enrollment is lower than where it needs to be to financially support the school. For other schools, it's not the enrollment, it's a space issue. We have more students than we know what to do with, than we can accommodate, but we don't have the funds to expand. For other schools, it might be faculty retention. We have a revolving door with our faculty. We just can't seem to keep them, and that's an inherent weakness. You also have to understand the state of the market for Montessori schools locally. What's happening in your area in Montessori education? And it can be, is it a situation of market saturation, like in the North Dallas area where I live and work? Or is it a case where there are no Montessori schools, where people are asking for them and there's a scarcity? You can't sit in your office, close the door, and put your head in the sand and not be in the know about what's happening in your local community. And you also have to engage as a leader on a larger scale into the statewide the statewide Montessori community, um, the the community in the country, what's happening in different parts of the country, what's happening in other countries in Montessori. And you have to inquire and network and educate yourself. Because what's happening outside the four walls of your school is going to have an impact on your plans and some decisions that you make. So, where are you now? So going back to the example of coaching, how coaches have to plan, they have to know where their team is right now in order to plan for the future. Are they at the bottom of their conference? Are they the middle? Or are they um, fighting to keep that number one ranking? Um, your accurate mission statement is critical to determining your future. If you don't know where you are, you can't know where you're going. Um, if you were dropped off in New York City, assuming you don't know the area, and you had no iPhone and there were no street signs, and you were trying to reach Central Park, but you had no idea where you were. We dropped you in the middle of the city. It would be very unlikely that you would be able to find your destination of Central Park without knowing where your starting point is. So you'd have to rely on your memory, but if you've never been there before, that wouldn't help you much, or having people direct you. But in a very busy place like New York City, um, if you don't know your way around and you have no guidance, you're probably not going to be able to reach your destination. In developing your mission statement, a good exercise would be to list your purpose and primary objectives. Again, getting back to why do we exist and for whom do we exist? Who do we serve? Is it just the top uh, 10% of the community as far as income, top 10%, or do we serve a diverse community? Do we serve um, just the area around us, or do our students come from 25, 30 miles away? What do we do now? What makes us unique? What makes your school different from all of the other Montessori schools, all the other fish in the sea? What defines you as a school and sets you apart from the sea of sameness? What benefits do we offer our school community? So, what draws people here? Why do they come here? Why do families come here? Why do they stay? And why is talented faculty drawn here? What draws them here? In your mission statement, which is your present state of being, your mission statement summarizes your present objectives. What are we doing now? And it leads to future aspirations. Where are we going from here? So, your mission statement is your starting point. I know that I'm on Fifth Avenue in New York and I need to get to Central Park. And the strategic plan would be the compass or directions to get you to your destination. Excuse me. Mission statements. Here's some samples of some. We are committed to the development of the whole child by implementing curriculum and methodology based on the Montessori philosophy of education and human development, and by partnering with parents, children's first teachers in this endeavor. Just want to point out that you notice that this is um, present tense, implementing and partnering. Your mission statement need to be in present tense. This one, our mission is to provide a quality environment, holistic in its approach, which unleashes our children's natural curiosity, their intrinsic desire for lifelong learning, and the innate ability to be citizens who better our world. Again, written in present tense. So, pulling out some mission statement goals, providing quality Montessori, developing lifelong learners, creating citizens of the world, committed to the development of the whole child, providing opportunities for a variety of learning styles, offering bilingual classrooms. So, those are what we're doing right now. And you better be able to, if you put it in your mission statement, to be able to substantiate it, to be able to back it up. So, just pulling one of those out of offering bilingual classrooms. If that is in your mission statement and I come to your school, I should see bilingual classrooms, not just a Spanish teacher coming in for 30 minutes a week. If our mission, we're developing lifelong learners, I better be engaging with the alumni and following them to see what they're doing after they leave my school. Because if I have no contact with them after they leave, how can I substantiate that my school is developing lifelong learners? So I often see mission and vision statements mixed up. Um, and I just wanted to emphasize the difference. So they are alike in that they're used to summarize the goals and objectives of your school, but they serve two different purposes. And again, it goes back to the mission statement describes the present state of your school, and the vision describes the future state of your school. So you are the captain, you're at the helm, you're looking ahead to a future destination. The mission is where you are right now, your navigational points, and the vision is the destination. So, step two in developing your strategic plan is to identify your core values. And it's very simply what's important to your school. And there are different areas where the values live. Um, we value community, we value Montessori, we value respect, we value stability, we value accessibility. So you're going to answer what do you believe it takes to deliver the highest quality of Montessori within each area? So we value these things. How do we value these things? So there's a number of things. I just pulled out some examples, but we as a school value respect. We value respect for children, for faculty, and for the parent community. So if that's something that I believe, um, then that should be something that a visitor coming to the school should be able to see. Now, your core values are going to be the foundation for your vision. So these aren't necessarily things that you are doing right now. There are things that you value. So in the second area, we value stability. We value faculty retention. We value student retention. We value low attrition rates. We value financial strength, and we value safe facilities. So again, it doesn't mean that we're retaining our faculty or our students or that we've got financial strength. It's just saying that we value it and it's something that we aspire to instill in our community. In the third area, community, we value communication. We value community. So through the valuing of community, we value communication, we value parental support and parental engagement and parent education, and we value parental ambassadors. We value Montessori. So we value the elements of Montessori. We value a child centered environment. We value role modeling. We value age appropriate environments. We value fully equipped classrooms. In the fifth example, we value accessibility. That means we value reaching out to the community regardless of economic state. We value making this our school and what we do, Montessori, accessible to not just a defined group, but we want to broaden the range of who we serve. The vision starts by asking questions. Um, so we're looking to the future now. Where do we ideally want to be? Going back to my original examples of planning, the collegiate coach, where does he want to be? Let's see, he's at the bottom of his division. Maybe he wants to move up two spots. Um, and or maybe um, in the example of getting in shape, where do we want to be? Well, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 15 pounds. I want to be able to run a marathon. I want to be able to fit into that outfit I wore when I was 25, whatever the goals are. By when do we want to accomplish this? Because um, human nature tells us that if there is no deadline, things will never get done. We kind of function, it kind of deadlines and timelines put some structure and help us to channel our resources to get things done. How do we plan to get there? How do we plan to reach our goals? And this one, the last one, is one that I find we miss a lot. How will we know when we've arrived? So we will know when we've arrived on that dream vacation, when that plane starts to descend and we see blue water and palm trees and people on the golf course or wherever you're going. So we recognize that we came from Dallas, Texas, or Baltimore, Maryland, and now we're in a different place. And that's what it looks like. It looks beautiful. So we have to also understand once we accomplish our goals, what that will look like. So if our vision is provide the highest quality of Montessori, that's a very broad vision. And I hope that all Montessori schools strive to provide the highest quality of Montessori. But just taking that as our vision, that's where we want to be. So we have to start by asking ourselves some questions. What does that look like? What does that require, providing the highest quality of Montessori? We need to break that down into manageable bites. So I've identified what I believe are characteristics of high quality Montessori, and that would be well trained faculty, experienced mentors, fully equipped classrooms, age appropriate materials, frequent, accurate observations, multi aged classrooms. So there can be we can add a lot of things to that list, but for the purpose of example, just want to show you how those requirements to meet our vision um, translate into a plan. So these are all well-trained faculty, experienced mentors, fully. Those are all great things, right? And but how do we make sure we have a well-trained faculty? Well, my strategic plan might include something like allocate funds to invest in quality faculty. So not only will the plan say that, it will actually allocate a certain percentage of money that is something concrete we can do to get us well trained faculty. And again, that's very broad. You're not going to fire every teacher, but you're going to have a plan where you start to bring those experienced, well trained faculty members on board, not all at once. And that plan might articulate that as well, how that's going to happen, where you're going to start, percentage of funds you're going to put aside, and produce some concrete, tangible steps to reach that goal. Experienced mentors. So we want to have how do you get experienced mentors? Well, something I might incorporate into the plan is to devise a plan for retiring guides to transition into mentor roles. So quite often we keep guides in lead positions long after their expiration date, long after they're able to do the job really, really well for two reasons. One, in my experience, they love what they do. It's so much a part of their life, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But it becomes challenging for them. The physical demands of the job, sitting on the floor, lifting children, keeping up with technology. There are a lot of challenges for people that have been doing this for a long time. So one reason they stay long is it's part of their life and they love what they do and it really defines um, their lives and they don't want to give it up. Um, and a second reason is we have such a shortage of teachers that they're really hard to replace. So they feel obligated to stay because there's no one to take over for them. So something that um, you might incorporate into your strategic plan is to come up with a detailed plan to transition um, guides to mentor positions, mentor roles where they're getting the best of both worlds. They are not completely cutting off themselves from the Montessori world. They still have interaction with the children, but we're actually celebrating them by um, using their knowledge and experience to guide others. So their role transitions from that of a guide of children to a guide of guides, a leader, a mentor. So we also think that well equipped classrooms are critical to providing the highest quality of Montessori. So, what does that look like? Well, we've got to allocate a percentage of funds to add materials as needed, to repair materials as needed, and to replace materials as needed. We know that the Montessori environment should be beautiful and draw the children in. And sometimes that's not the case. We're missing the part of the pink tower, or we're missing, um, you know, a piece in the map. Um, and we don't they seem like little things, but we don't allocate funds to keep the environment beautiful. So if we're going to have fully equipped, beautiful classrooms, we have to um, set up a strategic plan to make sure that our classrooms are always fully equipped. Um, we feel that age appropriate materials are critical in the environments in order to provide the highest quality of Montessori. So we can't, we have to have, make sure that we're not putting materials in the classrooms for the wrong reasons, putting primary materials in a toddler classroom to impress the parents, putting materials in the classroom that the children are not ready or allowed to use. Um, it's so we have to make sure that we understand what's appropriate and then follow those guidelines. We must provide frequent, accurate observations in order to provide the highest quality of Montessori. So, how does that relate into a concrete plan? Well, we need to provide ongoing support and faculty training. And in order to understand what type of meaningful support the faculty needs and what type of training, we have to observe. And not just once a year, we have to observe on an ongoing basis and see what areas the teachers need more support. And once we support them, and I'll talk about this in another class, but when teachers feel supported, they're more likely to stay with us. And that's going to take care of another problem, which is teacher retention. Um, we have to provide multi-age classrooms. We have to have the dynamics right in order for us to get the results we're looking for. And the reason many of our classrooms are not multi-aged, you have primary classes that are comprised of 3 and 4-year-olds, is because we tend to lose a lot of children at the kindergarten age to public school. So how do you keep that multi-aged, those multi-age classrooms and those dynamics intact? Well, that comes through parent education. We don't try to educate parents just during re-enrollment time. We have to educate them and engage them from the very moment they walk into our school. So implementing a parent education program is our investment in retention. Now, what I've listed here, these are strategic plans. They're the start of a strategic plan. There's a lot more detail that would have to be added to each of these plans to make it more concrete. So, providing ongoing support and faculty training based on frequent and accurate observations. I actually have to allocate time as the leader to go observe and not just throw that in there, because I have to plan that as part of my regular schedule. If I'm going to implement a parent education program, again, that's broad. We start, all right, we want multi-age classrooms. We feel that parent education is key to retention. But there's a lot more that goes into that. You actually have to identify the days and the times on the school calendar and the topics in order to implement that, and then come up with the speakers. So requirements for highest quality of Montessori education are very broad. Your initial strategic plan um, is a means to an end, but then you have to go a little bit further than that and actually making the plans concrete and something that you can put into motion. Here are some samples for vision statements. Our vision for all students to reach their full potential as collaborative, independent learners by providing a Montessori education that nurtures their spirit and helps them become engaged citizens of the world. Another vision is our vision is to establish and maintain schools that strive for excellence by providing accessible, quality Montessori education in growing communities. The school's aim is to prepare children to reach their full potential and to play a responsible role in protecting the global environment and fostering peace and harmony with natural processes and community interest. The second one is a mouthful. What I want to point out is both of them start with our vision, as you can see, so it's clear that it's a vision for the future, to reach their full potential, that's in the future, to establish. So again, these are written in future tense as visions. So pulling out some statements from the vision statement: to create and foster a productive learning environment, to make Montessori available to all children regardless of family income, to commit to advancement of faculty, to build strong community, to foster a peaceful and harmonious community of learners. These visions, these statements that will be incorporated into the vision statement come from the core values. So they come from what we value as a school, what we value as a community. And again, they're not what we're doing, they're putting a plan into motion of what the ideal will be in the future. So, just reviewing and breaking this down even a little bit more, the very first step, we start with our mission. Where is your school right now? At this present moment. Then the second step would be determining what we value, what's important to us. From that, the values, the core values, are a platform for what kind of future must we create to satisfy our values. The plan is what must we do to work towards our vision. Another part of the plan is to determine who will play a part in carrying out the plan, who's going to be on the team. We have to plan what resources we need to fulfill the plan. So now everything's in motion, we need to review the progress towards the goals. And if we're not progressing, then we need to change something. So this is breaking the steps down even into even smaller steps. So ideally, we want to convert our ideals, our visions, into action to set us into forward motion of progress, and strengthening our mission, strengthening who we are right now to where we want to be. So mission is where we are now, core values, what's important to us, where do we want to be based on our ideals? Where do we want to be based on our ideals? What's our strategy? What's our map to get there? How are we going to monitor the results? And what revisions need to be made? and then it starts over again. So, as I said before, the mission statement can and should evolve as those ideals are met. So, step number three, what must we do in order to put the wheels in motion? How do we get this all going? Well, you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have verbalized what you believe. Now you must articulate the steps to achieve values in each area you have identified. So, we did that a little bit, but we need to go a step further. So, in our previous example, we said what is required to provide the highest quality of Montessori. And we gave some general things: qualified faculty, well equipped classrooms, those types of things. And then the first step in developing the strategic plan is to come up with, well, if we want qualified faculty, then we need to allocate funds for it. Now we need to take it a step further and say, what percentage of funds will be allocated towards faculty training, who will get the training, and how will it be delivered? So it's like each step leads to more detail, and the more detail requires more definition. So the plan is a means to an end. The vision is to provide quality Montessori. The plan is to invest in qualified faculty. If the vision is to develop lifelong learners, we have to capture the imaginations with materials. If our vision is to create citizens of the world, perhaps we develop a peace program. If our vision is to commit to the development of the whole child, perhaps we establish a fine arts program of dance and music and art, and sports. If our vision is to provide opportunities for a variety of learning styles, we have to provide ongoing faculty training and observation, and perhaps bring people in that can offer the children the kind of support they need that we are not qualified to deliver, like an academic language therapist for dyslexia or a speech pathologist for speech therapy. So we have to, if we're saying that this is how we vision our school in the future, then that has to be worked into our strategic plan. And then the plan has to be broken down into smaller, defined, concrete steps to achieve the goal. It starts with working backwards from the ideal scenario. So going back to our dream vacation, where do we ultimately want to end up? Europe, on a Caribbean cruise, Disneyland, the mountains, New York City. Where are we now, and where do we want to be? You must set a plan to get there. And what do I have to accomplish to achieve the plan? This includes the timing, the allocation of resources, and the anticipated obstacles and how we're going to deal with those. And lastly, we have to execute the plan by following a series of very specific steps you have outlined. These steps must be clearly communicated with all who are involved in the vacation plans. And finally, your planning, diligence, and patience will reward you with your dream vacation. So, just to pull out, in the fourth step, executing the plan, it is very, very critical to the success of the plan that the steps are clearly defined and that there's attention made to detail. And as the leader and the architect of the plan, you have to also make sure that the plans are clearly communicated with all who are involved in executing the plan. So kind of think of like an architect. If you were to build a building, the architect is drawing the plans. He's not actually going to hammer nails and pour concrete, but he is identifying all the steps to build this structure. And everything has to be so clearly communicated, or the building is going to fall down. And down to, how long will these beams be? What will the foundation be? How thick is the concrete? All of that. And I'm probably not giving you a great example because I'm not a builder, but if you ever read plans, architectural plans, it's very, very specific because there's no room for error there. Your strategic plan sets your path. So it helps you set priorities. When you sit down to write your strategic plan, you have to identify what's of most importance right now in order to set your priorities. So, for example, if you've got a bunch of um, things that are derived from um, your beliefs, your values, your core values. So you value stability, and let's say at this very moment you're having a very difficult time keeping your toddler teachers. Um, so that's something that needs to be a priority for you. Some other things on your list might be, implementing a garden program or implementing a fine arts program or expanding the snack menu or, just throwing things out there. But you have to identify and treat the issue that is causing that is jeopardizing or causing the most um, drawing the most attention at that moment. So if you're having a hard time keeping your toddler teacher, what's that going to do? That's going to create a situation where you eventually run into a retention problem. So families start to leave the school, so your cash flow drops, then you're not going to have the money to implement the gardening program. You're not going to have the money or the need to change the snack schedule or um, so you have to, like when you're treating the body, let's say think of your school as a body. If one of your limbs is damaged, um, that needs to be taken care of before you start training for a marathon. So the priority has to be set to the greatest need at that moment. Your strategic plan also helps you focus your energy and resources. So one thing that school leaders do very well is to take on way too many projects at once. And um, they never finish any of them. What happens is you take on too many things because are very ambitious and you want to fix everything that's wrong all at once. So you start all these projects and then nothing gets done. And you are unfocused yourself and you're not able to channel your energy and your resources because there's just too much going on at once and everything's busy but nothing is actually getting done. So by prioritizing, we need to figure out why we're having a hard time retaining our toddler um, lead teachers. Is it a hiring issue? Is it a environmental issue? Is it a lack of support? Is it, what is it that's causing this high turnover? And then focus our energy and resources on addressing that problem. It establishes agreement among your faculty on expected outcomes of action. So, um, going back to the example of we're having a hard time retaining toddler teachers. This is how it's harming our school community. If we're able to fix this, then this is what the outcome will be. And your outcome for your plan has to be something that strengthens some aspect of your school operations, or nobody's going to buy into it. And your plan, it also allows for assessment and adjustments. Your plan is not set in stone. And there will be times where things within your control cause you to make adjustments, and things that are outside your control require you to make adjustments. So, setting priorities, just simply what's important right now. And you have to kind of look at that as a holistic view of the school, not what's important to you as the school leader, but what's important to the school. What is a pressing pressing need right now. Focus on just one thing at a time. You're not a juggler. You can't juggle. We think that we're great multitaskers, but the reality is we are much better when we're focusing on one thing than trying to multitask, focusing on multiple things. It doesn't make sense that you can be as engaged with 5 tasks as you are if you're just working on one. Um, and don't get me wrong, as school leaders, you have to multitask. That's a skill because there are things on a day-to-day basis that you have to address. You can't lock yourself in your office and say, I'm working on my strategic plan and I'm not coming out for a week. No, you engage, and there are things that are going to come across your desk, and phone calls and issues and questions and concerns, and you do have to address those. What I'm talking about is major projects, not the day-to-day things, but I'm talking about taking on more than one major project at a time. Don't do it. You'll become overwhelmed and ineffective. You have to align your resources. So, as a school leader, you're the coach, your faculty is the team. You have to identify the goal, figure out what has to happen to reach the goal. How are you going to win? Map out each step clearly, like an architect draws plans for a building. Clearly communicate the steps and line up your resources to execute the steps. So, in the case of this football team, the goal is to win the game. Um, the coach needs to figure out what has to happen. So, what are the opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and how can we use those to our advantage? He has to figure out in his mind what the plan is, then be able to communicate it to the team, and then line up the team and execute the plan and run the plays. So it's really, really important, in order to get people to buy in to what you're selling, that you are able to articulate the expected outcomes. So if you have ever built a house um, from the ground up, what usually happens is you decide on the style, and then the architect draws the plans, and then he does this rendering of what the house will look like when it's done. And what that rendering does is sets the expectations. This is what this house is going to look like once we follow all the steps, once we get the plans approved, once the builder breaks ground, we pour the foundation, we get the frame up, then we get the walls up, and all these steps, because anyone that's ever built a house knows that it's a very painful process and requires a lot of patience, a lot of money, and a lot of choices. And what makes the process a little bit more bearable is that rendering of what it's going to look like. So if we go through the pain of building this house and spend all of this money and spend a lot of time picking out, flooring and light fixtures and all of that, then this is what it's going to look like. So it makes the process seem worth it. And as a leader, you have to effectively communicate what that rendering is going to look like. Paint that picture if the plan is successfully executed. So getting back to how will we know when we have arrived? This is what it's going to look like. When that plane touches down and you see that blue water and those palm trees, you just exhale, because all of these steps you took to getting on that dream vacation are finally here. And we know we're here because we see blue water and palm trees, and my blood pressure's down. And what will the overall benefit of reaching our goals be? Well, you have to paint that. That's part of your rendering. So once we touch down, what will we see? What does our destination look like? You have to paint that picture. When you're communicating the expected results, there are several benefits. It builds your credibility as a leader. You're actually putting some skin in the game. You are saying and committing to this plan that if we do A, B, and C, the result will be this. It gives your team something to look forward to. Like when you're building that house, you see that beautiful rendering. It makes the process a little less painful when you know that the outcome is going to be a beautiful home. When you're trying to get in shape, if you know that if you stick to the plan and you get up early in the morning and you run and you lift and you're watching your diet, that you're going to be healthier in the end. Um, it inspires your faculty to work towards the goal. So you've identified the goal. A lot of people can't imagine what the result is actually going to look like. So you have to paint that picture for them. And it's really exciting and energizing to the community when the leader goes through the process of planning, articulating the plan, executing the plan, and painting the picture for what the results are going to look like. Your job is to get everybody excited about the plan and to buy into it. Some goals to consider in your strategic plan might be like establishing new programs like a neonatal unit, elementary or high school. Those are very big goals, especially the high school goal. Implementing a fine arts program, such as music, dance, or art, adding a library or a gymnasium, adding a summer camp program, purchasing and implementing an online record keeping system, adding a food service program, starting a parent education program, sponsoring Montessori certification of some of your faculty, or seeking Montessori accreditation. So some of these are big goals, some are smaller goals, but just some things to consider. So getting back into what's in it for us in communicating the outcomes, the expected results of your plan have to be tied to strengthening some aspect of the school community. If I decide as a plan that my goal is going to be to make $1 million a year, and I go through the process of planning out, one of my core values is I should be the highest paid. I value being compensated for a job well done. I'm going to make $1 million a year. I'm going to raise tuition and cut teacher salaries in order to accomplish my goal. That's going to go over like a ton of bricks because it's not strengthening any aspect of the school community other than it's strengthening my bank account. And it has a negative impact on the faculty and the school community and a positive impact on me. So if, for example, the priority is student retention, because we historically have an attrition rate that is in excess of 30%. So that's a pressing need. That's a sustainability issue. So we need to reduce that attrition. Our goal would be to reduce it to 10% annually. And the identified goal is to start a parent education program. So the goal is to reduce attrition, and the plan will be to start a parent education program for retention. So when I'm communicating this to the faculty, I have to show them what's in it for them. They really probably are not going to get too excited that the expected results of my plan are to reduce attrition to 10% annually. That's not too exciting to them. What will be exciting to them is showing benefits to the community. So I might lay it out like this. If we have increased retention, here are some of the results. We will have increased cash flow for teacher raises, materials, and supplies. That's going to excite the faculty. I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years. I spend a good bit of my own money on materials and supplies for my classroom, and having that extra cash with increased retention is going to make a big difference to me. and make my life a little bit easier. Um, my increased retention is tied to increased discretionary income um, for more faculty training. So the amount of money that I have left over after meeting all of my financial obligations is my discretionary income, and I'm going to choose to spend that on faculty training. Um, and the teachers are Montessori teachers get very excited about learning, and the more tools we can give them, the easier their jobs will be. The increased retention will also be tied to decreased marketing costs. If I don't have to spend money to replace 30 to 40% of my student population every year, I'm going to have more money to spend on other things. The decreased classroom turnover will result in the retention of leaders. So I will get back to the mixed age group dynamics, and it will be easier for me as a teacher if I'm only getting 20 to 25% new children every year, and I'm keeping the majority of them for those 3 full years. I have more time with them. I'm going to be able to develop leaders. Those are things that are much more exciting and tangible results that get people excited. So, your resources. So far, you've gone through developing a mission, articulating your core values, developing a vision and goals based on those values, mapping out the steps to reach your vision. So, what's next? Now you need to figure out what resources you need to execute the plan. You've got everything else going on. You've planned and planned and planned. Now it's time to set the wheels in motion. So, one of your biggest resources, if not the biggest, is your human resources, your faculty. So, as a leader, you need to figure out what talents and strengths and skills you need to execute your goals. What do you need? And identify what is going to be required to reach that destination. Then you have to carefully analyze your faculty to see who has what you need to achieve the goals. Who on your team possesses those things that are required to execute the plan. And if you look at your team and nobody has something that you need, then are you going to bring someone else in, like a consultant or a trainer, or are you going to train that person yourself to meet those needs? So, if, for example, part of your strategic plan is to develop a parent education program, you would ask yourself which member of the faculty is knowledgeable, engaging, and confident to present topics. So, they're going to be more of your outgoing faculty member that likes to talk to parents, that looks forward to conferences, that does a lot of reading and research and likes to engage in a variety of topics, and is someone that's confident. And that person doesn't necessarily have to do all the parent education programs, but they can be the coordinator for the parent education program and pull the parents and the faculty for some topics, ideas for topics, and then organize the whole thing, set the dates for the year, come up with the topics, come up with the presenters. And you have to share your strategic plan with your faculty and clearly articulate what the plan involves, how it will be executed, and what is expected from each of them. People cannot meet expectations if the expectations aren't clear. So, a big part of your role and the success of your plan is going to be setting the expectations. Another big resource that you have at your disposal is financial resources. So, the financial aspect of running a Montessori school is usually not the favorite of heads of schools. They enjoy working with people, they enjoy coaching, they enjoy being the visionary, but they usually don't enjoy getting into the financial matters of the school. But regardless of the leadership structure, they have to understand where the money's coming from and where it's going in order to effectively manage and operate the school. And there are many different leadership structures. Some schools are owned and operated by the same person. So they pretty much are involved 100% in the financial aspect of the operation. Some schools are nonprofit. So you have a hired head of school that reports to a board of directors. Some schools are investments. So you have an investor who hires a qualified head of school. So there's a number of different structures, and the level of involvement varies depending on the leadership structure. But it's really important that the head of school, the person that is the architect for the strategic plan, understands the cash flow. Um, so, if, for example, you're committed to providing the highest quality of Montessori, we already talked about that involves a number of things, but one thing it involves is investment in your faculty. So, you'll have to allocate funds for teacher training. If the funds are not readily available, you have the option of raising the money, running a capital campaign, and asking for donations, raising tuition proportionately to the cost of the faculty training, or cutting costs in other areas that are not critical to executing the plan, or acquiring outside resources through a loan. But the reason I say that you really have to understand where the money's coming from and where it's going is that it helps you understand the culture of the school, because you have to carefully weigh the ramifications of your decisions by understanding your school's current structure, financial structure, and the ability to absorb the requirements of your plan. So if you have a situation, I'll just take, let's say you're going to raise tuition. You're going to implement a 5% tuition increase to cover the cost of the faculty training. If the tuition has gone up every year, and people are, you're griping about it, you're losing some students, that might not be the best route to go because it will ultimately defeat your purpose. If you are planning on cutting costs in other areas, let's say the after school program, or you're going to eliminate your fine arts program, and people are very sensitive that they're paying X amount of money, you're going to start cutting things, they will expect the tuition to go down, not up. So, or they feel like, or and not they, if people are expecting that I'm being charged X amount of money so my child can go to art and dance and music and all of these things, and then you choose that as an area to cut costs, they will expect the tuition to be decreased. So, again, you have to understand the school culture, the financial structure, and the community's ability to absorb whatever it is you're proposing, because it can ultimately backfire on you. This is the part of the fifth step in the plan, and it's the part that most people never get to. Most leaders never get to this. So they'll go through the whole process of planning and identifying, planning, articulating, communicating, but they never review. And what happens is the plan fails. It's either abandoned or just flat out fails. And so, as a leader, this is critical to the whole process. But you have to ask yourself, are you making the progress you planned in the time you allotted? And if yes, that's great. Keep going. If no, you must figure out what is impeding your progress and fix it or revise the plan. And you lose a lot of credibility as a leader if you bring everybody on board, they buy into your plan, and you go through all the steps and then the plan fails. What's going to happen the next time you want to do something? You're going to have less people willing to follow you because you never finished the first plan they bought into. So, some possible impediments in the execution of the plan or the reaching of the goals are an unreasonable timeline. Um, let's say you are building a gym and the weather is just not cooperating and it set you back your construction costs. So you revise the timeline. Um, let's say it's lack of clarity. People don't understand. You didn't do a great job in articulating the steps and articulating what is expected of each member of the team. So you need to create an environment where there's a safe environment where people can talk to you and be open and honest, because lack of clarity is communicated by those who receive the instructions. So you might think it's clear as day, but if they don't understand it, the plan is ultimately going to fail. So you need their input on their level of understanding of what needs to be done. It could be lack of communication, whether from you to the team, among the different team members, whatever that is. Insufficient financial resources. A lot of times we um, are come up with some project where we're building or adding on, and the amount of money we secured is not enough to cover the cost. Something happens along the way. We need to put a turn lane in, or they hit, uh, a, that something is in the floodplains, or it. A lot of these projects cost a lot more than they think. So it's okay to take a step back and analyze that or reanalyze it. Sometimes it's lack of cooperation or motivation on the part of the team. You often get at least one member of the team that's a Debbie Downer, negative all the time, and they can impact the rest of the team. So you need to, again, talk to the staff, get their feeling on how things are going, have them help you identify the problem and eliminate that toxic person if that's what the problem is from the plan. In some cases, it's a lack of expertise. If you've got a plan and you don't have the faculty member on board who or anybody on board that has the talents and skills that you need, then you probably need to look on the outside and bring a Montessori consultant in, or some type of mentor, and again, that goes back to networking with people and getting someone in there who's qualified to help you move the process along. The lack of community support, sometimes it could be the parent community or just the local community. The HOA has a problem with your construction of the new gym, and they give the city a hard time. You need to, again, figure out what the objection is, maybe go to an HOA meeting and get them to support your project, even if that requires some concessions or some revisions to the plan. And then sometimes they're just unforeseen obstacles, that, you know, things happen that are outside our control and they cause the plan to be a little bit slower, or cause us to uh, hit the pause button. um, but that's okay. And we just need to understand what needs to be done in order to get back on track. So, in overcoming the impediments, we need to identify what's holding our plan back. We need to map out trouble steps, and I'll explain that in a moment. And we need to implement a strategy to remove the obstacles. We need to communicate the changes to the plan and get back on track. So I love using the word trouble step, and it comes out of um, more than 25 years ago when I was engaged to my current husband. I convinced him that we needed to take ballroom dancing in order to not look foolish at our wedding when we had our first dance together. And he reluctantly agreed, and we signed up for this ballroom dancing class. And the instructor was this very little enthusiastic man, and he taught us all different styles, the tango and the foxtrot and the waltz. And when the class started, it was quite small, but he allowed people to join um, on an ongoing basis, kind of a rolling admissions to the class. And it got a little bit more crowded. So when there was nobody on the dance floor, it was easy to dance and follow his steps. As more people were introduced to the class and the class got more crowded, it became a little more difficult to get around um, other people. And he referred to something that I will never forget, and I use it a lot in my teaching, and it's called the trouble step. And he said, when you are dancing, um, you have to be able to sidestep um, to avoid running into other dancers who are not as graceful as you and still keep your momentum. So a treble step refers to that gracefully sidestepping a problem without ever losing your cool, without ever losing your momentum. And leaders have to be able to treble step. And treble stepping requires that you react to something that's outside of your control without losing your momentum, without losing it. And I love to use the term never let them see you sweat. As a leader, you have to keep it together and not be completely rocked by things that happen, obstacles that get in your way. Because you can always change and adjust with your when you trouble step. That's what it is. It's changing and adjusting without losing your momentum. So we can always change timelines. We can always review steps for clarity. We can always and should always have open lines of communication. We can always hit the pause button if financial resources are not readily available or being exhausted more quickly than we anticipated. We always can reassess our team's motivation and get them more excited about the end result. We can always bring consultants in areas that we need more support. We don't know everything. No one knows everything. And I think it's a wise decision to take the advice, the knowledge, and the experience of others, maybe your mentors, maybe consultants, maybe just people that have expertise in areas that you don't. Because in many cases, by not bringing someone in from the outside and maybe trying to save money, you actually spend more money by missing your target dates for your goals. People that have done it, that have gone through this journey, can do it much more efficient and help you reach your goal much more quickly. And they ultimately end up paying for themselves when you're able to start a program and generate more income. You can reach out to the community for external support, and that can be the local community, the parent community. Just be honest and open about what you're struggling with. Successful leaders learn to develop and execute strategic plans, but they also learn how to trouble step. You're on the dance floor, someone bumps into you, steps on your toe, sidestep, move around them, and don't lose your momentum. Trouble stepping requires seeing obstacles, avoiding obstacles, and gracefully moving on without harping on the past. That is a peacock in the picture, proud as a peacock. It is important that you leave your ego at the door. It is the one thing that can destroy a leader very, very quickly. So don't hold on to a plan that is not successful out of fear that you may look weak if you need to revise or change the plan, or maybe abandon it altogether and start over. Moving on after a letdown is essential to accomplishing your plan. You will make mistakes. Don't dwell on them. Don't dwell on them or feel you need to prove something. And a big part of leading is learning from the past, but not dwelling on it. And ironically, the opposite is true of leadership. If you have a big ego and you have a plan and the plan's not working admitting defeat or admitting that it needs to be changed is so much um, instrumental in building your credibility as a leader than holding on to something and doing the same thing over and over again and wasting time and resources and the energy of your faculty. Um, and if you have a plan that you refuse to let go or refuse to revise that's not working, you will find less and less people that are willing to follow you. Montessori leaders are proactive, not reactive, um, or they should be. There are a lot of reactive leaders, and there's a huge difference. The proactive leaders will be successful, the reactive leaders will fail. And proactive means that you are at that helm, you're looking out, and you always have the destination in your lens. You're always looking to the future. You're always looking for those obstacles. You understand there's going to be some things that are outside your control, and you're learning how to manage them. Um, but being proactive puts you in control of your school's destiny. Um, and that's what your job is. Your job is to be the leader that's going to ensure sustainability and growth for your school. Reactive leadership um, is just another word. It's not leadership at all. I don't even know why I use the term reactive leadership, but it's more like crisis management. It's not planning, getting in that vessel on that ship in the dark with no compass and no idea how you're going to get to your destination, and just reacting to things that happen on the way. And it's there's a difference, huge difference between a leader and a crisis manager. So, crisis management is not leading. Many leaders fail due to lack of planning. You have to plan. In the very, very beginning of this presentation, we talked about you have to plan to serve Thanksgiving dinner. You have to plan when you go to the grocery store. Everything that's possible requires planning. When you are a crisis manager, everything that happens is a big surprise. And they are put in a defensive position responding to circumstances that they most likely created by either not addressing something or not looking to the future to plan. And that big surprise, people that are crisis managers tend to be very, very negative and tend to point the finger at other people when the ultimate responsibility of the success of their school lies in their lap. And crisis managers are so busy putting fire after fire after fire out, they never get out of they never lift their heads to see the source of the fire. And while they're putting one out, another one's smoldering. And going back to my example of coaching any team, you can't win anything without scoring. You can't just train your team to play defense all the time. They have got to be well balanced between an offense, a strong offense, and a strong defense. But you can't just play defense all the time. Planning is so critical to the success um, of a leader, and it's ongoing. You don't plan once and then sit back and watch it play out, and that's it. You're constantly planning, and there will be times of year that you're planning more than others. Um, for many school leaders, a time that they're doing a lot of planning is in the summer when a lot of the teachers are on vacation or taking a break. And when they come back and there are some changes, the teachers sometimes scratch their head and say, when did this happen, or what, and they're usually good things. But it's time. You have to really take time to plan. And as I said, there's certain times of year where you're going to be busier. It's typically in the summer and then towards the end of the year where you're getting ready to re-enroll. You have to change your plans to avoid icebergs and keep your crew advised of what role they play in getting everybody to their destination safely. And your ability to foresee problems will come with training and experience. I applaud those who want to strengthen their skills by taking leadership training, because I found in my journey that that was essential to my success as a leader. And then I had to take that training and apply it, um, practical application of skills, apply it to my everyday life as a leader. And I had some great experiences, and I had some that were not so great. Um, but just keep in mind, and my closing thought on this presentation is, keep in mind that your success as a Montessori leader will largely depend on how you handle problems and learn from them. So people don't judge leaders on things that mistakes they make, human mistakes or things that happen that are outside their control, but they largely um, judge them on how they respond to them, because your skills as a leader are being able to turn things around, being able to fix things, and um, learn from your past. Failure is the greatest teacher. So, thank you for participating in our strategic planning class, and I will have some assignments for you, um, just to kind of exercise some of the things we've gone over today. And I look forward to your comments and questions um, on this topic. So, thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next class. Thank you.